Donald Trump is under pressure. So he can say what he likes. At the moment, the Democrats are winning this one.
And here with me on Pino and Friends, and I'm behind our political editor Adam Bolton and Sarah Baxter from the Marie Colvin Centre for International Reporting over in America, in New York. Tell us, just sum up your thoughts on the end of the shutdown, the government shutdown, longest shutdown for a very long time, Sarah. The recriminations are going to go on for a very long time. It was the Democrat side, or enough of them, that blinked on all of this, and that's caused a lot of resentment among their Democrat Party colleagues. And Donald Trump is treating it as an absolute triumph for him and the GOP. How do you weigh up that fallout? Who's come out ahead at this stage?
Best thing that ever happened to the Democrats is the end of the shutdown at this moment, in my view. And those senators who are getting a lot of manure pelted at them as a result of their actions are really just, taking the blame for doing the Democrats an awful lot of good. Because Thanksgiving was looming. People were panicking about the flights, how they were going to, this is the biggest travel day of the year in America, comes towards the end of this month. People were going without food stamps. Federal workers were really suffering and going unpaid. And in the end, the Democrats would have got it in the neck for continuing the shutdown. Instead, Congress has reopened, and guess what? Nobody's talking about the shutdown anymore. They're all talking about the Jeffrey Epstein files. And once more, Donald Trump is under pressure. So he can say what he likes. At the moment, the Democrats are winning this one. And if the Republicans do go ahead and do not renew some of the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act on health, and people's health premiums leap up in January, people will remember that this is what the Democrats tried to prevent and what the Republicans insisted on proceeding with. And so I think they're in for a rough ride, the Republicans, that is, and the Democrats are kind of sitting pretty.
Sarah, that's a pretty good analysis, but it's also fair to say, isn't it, that the sort of people who are activists for Mandami, for example, people, radical New Yorkers are pretty angry with the Democrats. They feel that Trump was on the ropes already and that he's been given ground. So it's maybe the right thing for the Democrats to do, but it's also split the party a bit, hasn't it?
Oh, yes, it definitely has. And you're quite right about that, Adam. And, there's a lot of sort of performative outrage going on. But those New York radicals have the satisfaction of welcoming Zoran Mamdani into their ranks as His Honor, the mayor of New York, from January 1st. And I think that, they're feeling pretty happy at the moment as well. They just like to whinge.
And medical cover, medical insurance, that's the next big massive crunch, isn't it, Sarah? Because, that crunch is going to come really quite soon. As it is, Americans relying on subsidies for their health cover, they're seeing those bills double and triple by the end of the year, not that much further ahead. After the midterms, we're looking at Medicare, and then you can see more big increases, but that's after the midterms. There's going to have to be this next upheaval very soon, in a matter of not very many weeks, and there will be more fallout from that. There's also got to be, by the way, another vote, hasn't there, on the question of money to keep the government going.
Oh, absolutely right. In fact, these government shutdowns are now they seem to happen every few months. It's quite hard to sort of keep pace with. So, we've only got a sort of temporary extension. It wouldn't surprise me to see the Republicans cave at the last minute on these health subsidies, because they are under pressure. They didn't perform well in these recent elections. The midterms are coming up, and Donald Trump is getting it in the neck for inflation and concentrating too much on foreign affairs instead of what he promised, which was the US economy. So, we'll have to see how this plays out. But it's not an easy time at the moment to be Donald Trump for once.
I'm not quite sure. Maybe you can explain it to me. The thinking on the Republican side and in the White House when it comes to the impact of the squeeze on medical health insurance, and for that matter, when it comes to Medicare, which, as I say, I know is after the midterms. How can that work to the benefit of the Republican Party?
Well, the Republicans have always thought that the Affordable Care Act was something terrible, and that somehow it's all Obama's fault for making medical insurance expensive, when in fact he did make it more affordable. But premiums are high. And, do you remember the outrage? I mean, literally, the chief executive of United Healthcare got shot, and some people celebrated because they felt that American health insurance was so, capricious and expensive and hard to obtain. There are always exemptions for this and that you think you're owed, and all, you have to battle bureaucracy every time. I've had to do that myself. And so but at the same time, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia has been a good weather vane on this, kind of because she was big Maga, but is saying, look, these increases in health insurance premiums that are coming down the pipeline are really going to hurt her voters, which are rural MAGA voting Georgians. So that's why I think in the end we might see the Republicans cave. But they're obsessed with the fact that the Affordable Care Act was somehow socialist medicine. They're longing to abolish it. They've never found anything better to put in its place.
What will the BBC's chairman, Samir Shah, put in that letter to Donald Trump, which has to be in by tomorrow? Sarah Baxter, there in the States. I'm looking at it from where you are, through the eyes of Donald Trump, and as far as that's possible in the White House. What will he want? What would he be expecting and demanding in that BBC letter, Sarah?
Well, he will be expecting a pretty big grovel because he loves to have people scraping and bowing down to him. And I think Samir Shah is probably ready to make it a pretty fulsome apology. Of course, Donald Trump is exploiting the situation by implying that speech, he's literally been calling it a perfect speech, as if it was blissfully moderate in tone throughout, which of course we know not to be the case. But, the other thing, John, that I have to stress is that it's very naive, I think, of British commentators, who I've been reading quite a lot of in recent days, to expect that what's really going to happen is that this case is going to go to court. It's not going to go to court if the example of ABC News and CBS News is anything to go by. It's more in the nature of a shakedown, which is this troublesome lawsuit will go away if you pay me a smaller sum. It could be 10 million, 15 million, 20 million, something to make Donald Trump feel satisfied, his ego massaged, and go away. But otherwise, he might try to make life difficult for the BBC and the companies that, like BBC America, part of AMC here, that broadcast in the States. I'm sure there are other ways that he'll be able to put the squeeze on the BBC, or certainly I imagine that's what he'll be looking to do.
Yeah, I mean, Roger Mosey, when I spoke to him earlier on, was talking about relying on facts and relying on the law. He argued the BBC should rely on the fact that, they got an edit wrong in this Panorama documentary, own up to that, say sorry for that. But if you're in American law, as vaguely understand it, you need to prove malice and you need to prove damage. And the argument could be, where's the damage and where's the malice? This was not a deliberate attempt to hurt the president in the way the president claims to have been hurt. Adam?
I also think it's much more difficult for the BBC to pay money because it's the licence payers' money. And I think it would not be good for the BBC's public standing to be seen to be using money which all of us basically have to pay off a president for a mistake. So I think it's a very difficult position for them unless they can get away with a really small amount, which I would probably put at about 2 million. And I think it would be of great use if they could say we're going to donate that to a charity rather than to Donald Trump. I mean, what Trump has been doing with this money is it's saying it's for his presidential library when he retires. But I think to give him money would be really problematic. Also, I actually think, although the BBC could face, being cold-shouldered by their reporters. I mean, for their reporters, after all, Caroline Levitt has said appalling things about the BBC, that it's state-funded and fake news and communist and all that. That might be a price worth paying to establish their independence and their impartiality. And again, it's not as damaging as what, if you're an American network operating in America subject to American regulation, you really can't afford to have the government going after you, however illegitimate it is. But actually the BBC in America, its exposure probably, could actually survive that. It's not an essential part of its business, its operation in America. So I think there's a bigger chance that the BBC might say, yeah, we apologise and leave it at that, and actually challenge Trump and Trump's people to actually go to court. And I'm not sure that Trump's got a very good case, A. And B, I suspect the judgment would be, what's it going to cost the BBC to defend this case versus what they would pay, could pay to get them off the back. And it's certainly nothing like $1 billion.
Yeah, Anna.
I mean, I just think what's not good for the BBC's public standing is the fact that they edited his speech in a documentary. I mean, it's the actual appalling nature of this case, and I'm astonished that there hasn't been an apology yet. I mean, how has there not been an apology? Imagine if they had done that to King Charles, and whatever the reasoning behind it, if King Charles had asked for an apology, they would have given it by now. So they're letting the fact that it's Donald Trump completely cloud their judgment on this. I suspect the delay is because there is a legal letter involved, there's a legal deadline, and there are going to be other things in that legal letter, sure, but you could still come out and make an apology.
Well, they have apologised publicly and said they made a mistake, not directly to Trump.
But it's different.
No.
They should apologise personally.
Yeah, except you didn't actually see it when it went out.
That doesn't matter.
Well,
that doesn't matter because it erodes trust. It really erodes. We talk a lot about trust, and it really erodes trust, not just in the BBC, but in everybody.
Yeah, there is the question at the heart of this, at the root of this, Sarah, I guess, isn't there? It is what if, yes, the clip was misleading. It depicted without any sort of production device to show this were two different parts of a speech at different moments. I mean, that was so. And so what was seen and heard on screen in the documentary was not precisely what was said, and the fact that it was edited was not apparent, so there was misleading about at that moment in that edit on that programme. But beneath all of that, there's the sort of underlying message of the whole thing, which is that Donald Trump was responsible for inciting an insurrection. If it does go to a court, does that then not mean, Sarah, that that question will have to be relitigated? In other words, like a rerun of the congressional inquiry?
Well, that would be awkward for Donald Trump, and that's why I don't think it's going to happen. So perhaps the BBC can get away with playing hardball. I don't think I'm quite as complacent as Adam is about the BBC's interests in America. I mean, BBC America's pretty popular on AMC, which paid quite a lot of money to broadcast it. And I'm sure it does collect revenue from that. I haven't seen the exact figures, but it is quite a successful thing over here. And I'm sure there are ways that Trump can try and hint that he can leverage some of the BBC's interests in America. We'll have to see. But it is true that I think Donald Trump would not like January 6th to be relitigated in any way that's unfavourable to him. At the moment, the BBC's gaffe, which was an editorial gaffe, has enabled him to run a coach and horses through the truth of what happened on that day, and which he has been doing 4 years, by the way, and is constantly harping on about. And we don't know that he's going to seek a third term. Of course, he keeps blowing hot and cold on the subject, hates being seen as a lame duck. But one of the excuses he constantly comes back to is that the 2020 election was stolen from him, and therefore he has a right to a third term. So good luck with that one, Donald. But it is part of his grievance message.